Come in. I dare you.
Omaima Nelson, A Feast of Horror. The Thanksgiving of 1991 in Costa Mesa, California, marked a macabre chapter in the life of Omaima Nelson. Born in Egypt, Omaima had grown up in a culture of strict traditions but carried dreams of liberation and success when she moved to America. Her life seemed to improve when she met Bill Nelson, a wealthy older man who promised her stability and luxury. However, behind closed doors, their marriage was a volatile mix of control, manipulation, and physical abuse. Bill's penchant for dominance clashed with Omaima's growing desperation to reclaim her agency. On Thanksgiving morning, the tension in their relationship hit a breaking point. After an unremarkable meal, Bill's behavior took a darker turn, with allegations surfacing later that he attempted to assault Omaima. Cornered and enraged, she retaliated with a ferocity born of years of suppression. Grabbing the nearest weapon, a pair of scissors, she lashed out in a deadly frenzy. Bill's size and strength made him a formidable opponent, but Omaima's rage made her unstoppable. With each stab, she poured years of pain and humiliation into her attack. When Bill fell to the floor, lifeless, Omaima found herself standing in the aftermath of her own wrath. But the violence didn't end with Bill's death. In a haze of survival instinct and sheer horror, Omaima dismembered his body. She chopped his corpse into pieces with chilling precision, wrapping some parts in trash bags and attempting to cook others. Her motive was twofold: to erase evidence of her crime and to symbolically obliterate the men who had controlled her. When police arrived days later, they were confronted with one of the most gruesome crime scenes imaginable. Omaima's trial became a media spectacle, with the defense arguing she had acted in self-defense against an abusive husband. Ultimately, she was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 27 years to life. Her story serves as a harrowing testament to the lengths a person can go when pushed to their breaking point, turning a day of gratitude into a nightmarish tableau of violence. Paul Michael Murridge, The Thanksgiving Massacre. Thanksgiving 2009 should have been a joyous day for the Murridge family. In their South Florida home, generations gathered to share a meal and create memories. Among them was Paul Michael Murridge, a man who had long struggled with depression, paranoia, and feelings of resentment towards his family. On the surface, Paul seemed calm, blending into the lively atmosphere. Beneath his demeanor, however, lurked a chilling premeditation. The meal began like any other, with laughter, chatter, and the passing of dishes. Paul participated in sing-alongs and casual conversation, giving no indication of his sinister intentions. But as the night wore on, Paul excused himself and retrieved a handgun. Without warning, he unleashed a torrent of bullets upon his family, killing his twin sisters, one of whom was pregnant, his aunt, and 6-year-old Michaela Sitton, his cousin's daughter. The massacre was swift and merciless, leaving survivors in shock and horror. Paul's chilling remark, "I've been waiting 20 years to do this," revealed the depth of his rage. After fleeing the scene, Paul became the subject of a nationwide manhunt that ended with his capture in a Florida motel. He showed no remorse, and his trial exposed a fractured man consumed by unresolved grievances. His actions left an indelible scar on his family, turning their Thanksgiving into a tragic reminder of how long-buried anger can erupt into catastrophic violence. Ayali's Clay Oliver, A Family Dispute Turns Deadly. Thanksgiving 2009 in Baltimore, Maryland, began as a typical family gathering for the Oliver household. Ayali's Clay Oliver, a 76-year-old patriarch, had spent the morning preparing for the festivities, determined to keep traditions alive. But tensions between Ayali's and his 49-year-old son, Keith, had been brewing for years. Keith, often perceived as irresponsible, had a habit of shirking household responsibilities, and on this day, Ayali's patience reached its limit. As the meal drew near, an argument erupted between father and son over chores. The exchange escalated quickly, with heated words giving way to anger that had been simmering beneath the surface for decades. In a moment of impulsive rage, Ayali's retrieved a .357 caliber revolver from upstairs. When he returned, the argument reignited, and Ayali's pulled the trigger, shooting Keith dead in their family home. The incident shattered the family's holiday, replacing the warmth of Thanksgiving with cold disbelief and grief. Ayali's was arrested, and his family struggled to reconcile the actions of a man they loved with the enormity of his crime. The tragedy underscored the fragility of family bonds and how unresolved tension can spiral into devastating violence, even on a day meant for gratitude. Byron David Smith, Vigilante Justice on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving 2012 found Byron David Smith alone in his Little Falls, Minnesota home. The retired security officer had been plagued by a series of break-ins, leaving him feeling vulnerable and paranoid. Determined to protect his property, he devised a plan to confront any would-be intruders. That morning, Smith parked his car away from the house to make it appear unoccupied, then waited in his basement with a rifle. Later that afternoon, 18-year-old Hailey Kiefer and her cousin, 17-year-old Nicholas Brady, broke into Smith's home, likely expecting to find it empty. Instead, they walked into a trap. Smith shot both teenagers as they descended into the basement, killing them instantly. The audio recording of the incident, captured by Smith's security system, revealed chilling details of his actions. He could be heard muttering, "I refuse to live in fear," as he fired again to ensure they were dead.
You're dead. Oh, sorry about that. You're dying. Bitch. Cute. I'm sure she thought she was a real pro. I feel a little bit safer. Not totally safe. I'm still shaking a bit, but a little bit safer. I refuse to live in fear. I am not a bleeding-heart liberal. I felt like I was cleaning up a mess. Not like spilled food. Not like vomit. Not even like diarrhea. The worst mess possible. In some tiny little respect. I was doing my civic duty. Because the law enforcement system couldn't handle it, and I had to do it. I had to do it. They weren't human. I don't see them as human. I see them as vermin. This bitch was going to go through her life spoiling things for other people. Thieving, robbing, drug use. It's all fun, cool, exciting, and highly profitable until somebody kills you. Like I'd give a damn who she is. I'm sorry. So much regret. I try to be a good person. I try to do what I should, be friendly to other people, help them when I can. Try to be a good citizen, not cheat people, be fair. And because I try to be a decent person, they think I'm a patsy, I'm a sucker. They think I'm there for them to take advantage of. Is that the reward for being a good person? And if I gather enough evidence, they might be prosecuted. If they're prosecuted, it might go to court. If it goes to court, they might be found guilty. If they're found guilty, they might spend.
Disturbingly, he waited until the following day to alert authorities, claiming he didn't want to disturb them on Thanksgiving. The case sparked national debate over the limits of self-defense and vigilante justice. While Smith argued he was protecting his home, prosecutors pointed to his calculated actions and the excessive force he used. Convicted of first-degree murder, Smith's story remains a cautionary tale of how fear and anger can push people into acts of irreversible violence. Shanika Alsop, a fork in the neck. Thanksgiving 2012 was a chaotic affair for the Alsop family in Maryland. Shanika Alsop, 27, had gathered with her relatives for the holiday, but the day was anything but harmonious. During dinner, a petty disagreement with her half-brother, Deontay Antonio Wallace, turned heated. The argument, fueled by underlying family tensions, escalated rapidly. In a moment of rage, Shanika grabbed a nearby serving fork and plunged it into Deontay's neck. The room fell silent as blood spilled onto the table, transforming the festive setting into a scene of horror. Family members scrambled to help Deontay, who was rushed to the hospital and survived the attack. Shanika was arrested and charged with assault, her actions leaving the family fractured and reeling. This seemingly trivial argument spiraling into violence serves as a grim reminder of how fragile holiday gatherings can be. Beneath the surface of celebrations often lie unresolved conflicts, waiting for a spark to ignite them. Karen Mitchell's disappearance, 1997. On a crisp Thanksgiving weekend in 1997, 16-year-old Karen Mitchell found herself in Eureka, California, visiting her aunt. The air was filled with the fragrant aromas of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie, painting a picturesque scene of a holiday gathering. Karen was a bright and spirited teenager, known for her love of exploring the quaint town, where she spent many summers with her relatives. On the fateful day of her disappearance, she left her aunt's store, a local establishment bustling with holiday shoppers, to run an errand. Witnesses reported seeing Karen enter a blue sedan, which was driven by an older man. This man would later be identified as Robert Durst, a millionaire real estate heir whose life story would unfold in a chilling documentary series titled The Jinx. Durst had a troubled past, marked by allegations of violence and a notorious reputation that would come to haunt him. His presence in Eureka was confirmed through credit card transactions, which placed him in the area at the same time as Karen's disappearance. However, the evidence tying Durst to Karen's fate was circumstantial at best. Despite extensive investigations, authorities struggled to find any concrete links that could definitively connect him to her abduction. As the search for Karen intensified, her family was engulfed in despair. Flyers bearing her photo peppered the town, and candlelight vigils were held in her honor, drawing support from the community. Each passing day without news deepened their anguish, as hope began to wane. Karen's parents, devastated by their daughter's absence, began to suspect that something far more sinister had occurred. They tirelessly campaigned for media coverage, hoping to keep Karen's story alive and in the public eye. They reached out to private investigators and followed leads, no matter how small, in their quest for answers. They also learned about other women who had gone missing under similar circumstances, igniting their fears that Karen might not be the only victim. As the years rolled by, the case grew cold, but the mystery surrounding Karen's disappearance remained unsolved. Durst himself became embroiled in further controversy, with subsequent accusations and legal battles related to other disappearances and murders. In 2015, he was arrested for the murder of his friend Susan Berman, and during his trial, his connection to Karen was brought up again. Yet, even with all the attention on Durst, there was still no closure for Karen's family. Karen Mitchell remains missing to this day, a haunting cold case that continues to baffle investigators and torment her loved ones. The uncertainty surrounding her disappearance have left an indelible mark on the community of Eureka, a reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that can lurk behind the facade of a holiday celebration. The Blunt Family Thanksgiving Bombing, 1985. In Lake Worth, Texas, Thanksgiving Day 1985 began with the promise of family, food, and festivities. The Blunt family had gathered for their annual holiday feast, filled with laughter and the comforting presence of loved ones. Preparations were in full swing as the aroma of roasted turkey filled the air, and tables were adorned with side dishes and desserts. However, what started as a day of joy quickly turned into a nightmare. As the family sat down to enjoy their meal, an explosion rocked their home, sending shockwaves through the neighborhood. A bomb had detonated inside, claiming the lives of 3 family members, Lily Blunt, Ricky Blunt, and Keith Blunt. The blast injured several others, leaving chaos and confusion in its wake. The joyous atmosphere was abruptly replaced by screams, sirens, and the frantic rush of first responders. The devastation left by the explosion was beyond comprehension, shattering the lives of those who survived and forever altering the community. In the aftermath, investigators began to piece together the events leading up to the bombing. The investigation quickly focused on Michael Roy Tony, who was arrested and later convicted based on shaky testimony and circumstantial evidence. Witnesses claimed they had seen Tony near the Blunt home on the day of the bombing, but the credibility of their testimonies was questionable. The trial was fraught with controversy, and as evidence came to light, it became clear that vital information had been suppressed by law enforcement, raising serious questions about Tony's guilt. Over the years, Tony maintained his innocence, and his legal team worked tirelessly to uncover the truth. As they dug deeper, they found discrepancies and inconsistencies in the case against him. In 2009, after years of legal battles, Tony was exonerated, a bittersweet victory in the shadow of a tragedy that had claimed innocent lives. Despite his release, the bombing case remained unsolved, leaving a lingering sense of fear and uncertainty in the community. The Blunt family's tragedy has haunted Lake Worth, Texas, for decades. No new suspects have emerged, and the unanswered questions about who planted the bomb and why continue to plague investigators. The Blunt family's story remains an open wound, a painful reminder of the violence that can erupt in the most unexpected of moments. The echoes of that fateful Thanksgiving Day continue to resonate, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating consequences of hatred and vengeance. The murder of Kimberly Riley and Jeremy Britt Bayanthavong, 2002. On Thanksgiving Day 2002, the Britt family in Tacoma, Washington, was preparing for a festive celebration filled with warmth and gratitude. The aroma of turkey and stuffing wafted through the air as family members gathered to share in the holiday spirit. Laughter and joy filled the home, but as the day unfolded, tragedy struck in a way that no one could have anticipated. As the family settled in to enjoy their meal, an unknown shooter opened fire into the Britt household, turning their celebration into a scene of horror. The gunfire pierced through the walls, striking down innocent victims. Kimberly Riley, just 19 years old, and 5-year-old Jeremy Britt Bayanthavong were killed in the senseless act of violence. The joyous gathering was quickly transformed into chaos, with family members scrambling to protect themselves and seek cover. The sound of gunshots echoed in the air, a jarring contrast to the laughter that had just moments before filled the home. In the chaos that ensued, the shooter fled the scene in a pickup truck, leaving behind a community in shock and mourning. Witnesses reported seeing a man driving away, but his identity remained a mystery. Law enforcement launched an immediate investigation, hoping to identify the shooter and determine the motive behind this brutal act. They canvassed the neighborhood, conducted interviews, and collected evidence, but the trail grew cold as leads fizzled out. As the days turned into weeks, the investigation faced numerous challenges. There were no clear suspects, and the community was left grappling with their grief and confusion. Friends and family members of Kimberly and Jeremy organized vigils to honor their memory, lighting candles and sharing stories in their remembrance. The tragedy left a deep scar in the hearts of those who knew them, and the lack of closure only amplified their sorrow. Over the years, the murders became a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the impact of gun violence. The Britt family's tragedy became a part of local lore, a cautionary tale that resonated with the community each Thanksgiving. The unanswered questions about the shooter and the motive behind the attack lingered, turning their holiday into an enduring mystery. Beth Lynn Barr's abduction and murder, 1977. On a chilly Thanksgiving afternoon in 1977, 6-year-old Beth Lynn Barr set out on a seemingly ordinary walk home in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. The excitement of the holiday buzzed in her young heart as she made her way back from a friend's house, thoughts filled with the anticipation of turkey and family gatherings. Beth was a bright and lively child, known for her infectious laughter and spirited nature. Her family had plans for the holiday, and her absence was not initially alarming. They believed she would return shortly. However, as hours passed without word from Beth, concern began to mount. Her family and friends started searching the neighborhood, calling out her name, hoping she would emerge from around the corner with a smile. Witnesses reported seeing her enter a blue sedan, driven by an unknown individual, but details about the driver were scarce. The community rallied to help, posting flyers and organizing search parties, but no signs of Beth were found. Days turned into weeks, and the search intensified. Law enforcement utilized every resource available, scouring the area for any trace of the young girl. Despite their efforts, Beth seemed to have vanished without a trace. The community, once filled with the joy of the season, fell into despair as the reality of the situation settled in. Beth's family held on to hope, believing that their daughter would return home, but as time wore on, that hope began to fade. 2 years later, in 1979, the search for answers took a grim turn when skeletal remains were discovered in a remote area. The remains were confirmed to be Beth's, sending shockwaves through the community and leaving her family shattered. The investigation revealed evidence suggesting that Beth's abductor had stolen a rental car to facilitate the crime. However, the details of her abduction and the identity of her captor remained a mystery. Despite the tragic discovery, no suspects were ever identified, and the case grew cold. The haunting nature of Beth's story lingers in the hearts of her family and the Wilkinsburg community. Each year, as Thanksgiving approached, the memory of Beth's disappearance resurfaced like a ghost, reminding everyone of the innocence lost and the darkness that can invade even the most cherished moments. Vigils were held in her memory, where friends and family gathered to share stories and light candles, keeping her spirit alive in their hearts. The investigation into Beth's abduction remained dormant, with few leads to pursue and no suspects to question. The lack of resolution left her family grappling with unanswered questions and profound grief. They often recalled the last time they saw her, the way she skipped down the street with joy, full of life and laughter, and how that vibrant spirit had been extinguished in an instant. The pain of losing Beth was compounded by the knowledge that her story could have ended differently if only they had known how to protect her from the evils of the world. As the years passed, her case became a haunting reminder of how vulnerable children can be. The community of Wilkinsburg, while trying to heal, could not escape the shadow of Beth's tragic fate. The local police department kept her case open, hoping that new technology or a fresh lead might someday provide answers. Cold case detectives revisited the investigation periodically, reviewing old evidence and striving to find connections that might have been overlooked in the past. In the hearts of those who knew her, Beth Lynn Barr remained a symbol of innocence and loss. Her family continued to advocate for child safety, hoping to raise awareness about the dangers that lurk in seemingly ordinary situations. They became involved in community outreach programs, educating parents about the importance of vigilance and communication with their children. Each Thanksgiving, they would share Beth's story, ensuring that her memory would not be forgotten and that her legacy would inspire others to take action in their own communities. The mystery surrounding Beth's abduction and murder was a bitter reminder of the fragility of life. As her family gathered around the Thanksgiving table each year, they would share a moment of silence for their beloved daughter, wishing for a different outcome and holding on to the hope that someday, the truth would come to light. Paul Knockel's Thanksgiving Disappearance, 1990. In Dubuque, Iowa, Thanksgiving in 1990 was marked by a sense of anticipation as families prepared to gather for the holiday feast. Paul Knockel, a 53-year-old man known for his friendly demeanor and love for family gatherings, was looking forward to celebrating with his loved ones. As the day approached, Paul made plans to host his family for Thanksgiving dinner, eager to share the warmth and joy of the holiday. However, as the sun began to set on Thanksgiving Day, Paul was nowhere to be found. His family had arrived at his home, but when they knocked on the door, there was no response. Concerned, they tried calling his phone, but it rang unanswered. As the minutes turned into hours, worry quickly turned to panic. They decided to search his home, and what they found was unsettling. Everything appeared untouched, as if Paul had simply vanished into thin air. His car was still parked outside, and his belongings remained in their places, giving no indication of where he might have gone. Family members reported seeing Paul's vehicle near a Wisconsin highway earlier that day, which raised even more questions about his sudden disappearance. Had he left for a drive and encountered trouble? Or had something more sinister occurred? Local authorities were called in to investigate, and they began their search, canvassing the area and interviewing neighbors. Despite their efforts, no concrete leads surfaced. The investigation revealed no signs of foul play, and Paul's disappearance puzzled everyone. His family provided a description of his character, portraying him as a devoted father and loving brother who would never willingly abandon them. They held on to hope that he would return soon, but each passing day without news deepened their despair. As time passed, the community rallied around Paul's family, organizing search parties and spreading flyers in hopes of finding him. Friends and relatives shared memories of Paul, recounting stories of his kindness and generosity, which only intensified the pain of his absence. They held vigils, lighting candles and praying for his safe return, clinging to the hope that he would be found. Months turned into years, and the investigation began to grow cold. Detectives reviewed old leads and explored every possibility, but the trail had grown silent. Paul Knockel's case became one of those haunting disappearances that linger in the minds of those left behind, a constant reminder of the uncertainties of life and the fragility of existence. Over the years, Paul's family fought to keep his story alive, reaching out to local media and even appearing on national television programs dedicated to missing persons. They sought to raise awareness about his case, hoping that someone, somewhere, might hold the key to unraveling the mystery of his disappearance. Each Thanksgiving, as they gathered around the table, they reserved a seat for Paul, symbolizing their unwavering love and hope for his return. The unanswered questions surrounding Paul's disappearance continued to baffle investigators. Where had he gone, and why had he vanished so suddenly? His family remained determined to find answers, holding on to the belief that one day, the mystery would be solved, and they would be reunited with their beloved father, brother, and friend. The legacy of Paul Knockel's disappearance serves as a poignant reminder of the unpredictability of life and the enduring strength of hope in the face of uncertainty.
Come in. I dare you.